What's up, everybody, and welcome to this special July 4th weekend edition of Ask Shane Anything right here on SIFTD Games at SIFTD.net. Tomorrow is July 4th, and so the United States has a national holiday. I am actually taking a day off. It's the first day off I've had in I don't know how long. I think I've worked now 24 days in a row. I'm not exaggerating. So I need a little bit of a break going through the whole E3 thing, and then this the whole streaming on YouTube, all this stuff. It just adds up. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but when it's one person doing everything, it's a freaking lot. So I have to really budget my time to get all this stuff done. And at that, I still work like 15-hour, 16-hour days. So anyway, I'm going to enjoy tomorrow. I hope you guys will too, even though July 4th is a little bit of a dark shadow here. Obviously, I'm wearing my 76ers hat. Here we are 250 years later, and it feels like it might be over. It was a good run. Okay, first up, we have a question from Kevin. What is your take on the massive layoffs at Microsoft, which have resulted in the cancellation of Everwild and Perfect Dark and the closure of the initiative? Is this the result of the developers not delivering, or is this related to Microsoft needing to cut some of its fat after the Activision acquisition? First of all, Kevin, you understand the assignment. If you can do what Kevin does, you will get a lot of questions and Ask Shane Anything. And what he did was he found the big headline from the week, and then he asked me about it. And of course, I'm going to answer the question. So anyway, let me get to your question, Kevin. The first thing, this is complicated, I guess is the first thing I'm going to say. And the second thing I'm going to say is that I don't know for sure. I'm just using my knowledge and whatever insight that I have working in this industry for 30 years to try to get you a decent answer about this. So again, I don't think anything is cut and dried here because I don't think we're ever going to have all the information that we need to come to a solid conclusion on this stuff if you're not working at Microsoft or Xbox anyway. So your first question is, are these cancellations, studio closures related to the developers not delivering? So you asked about two different games, but I guess I would say in both cases, I think there's a little bit of guilt there. So let's take on Perfect Dark first. So Microsoft started this brand new studio called The Initiative just to develop Perfect Dark. Not long after it did that, all of a sudden we started hearing that these other developers have jumped in and started helping The Initiative on Perfect Dark. And people were like, whoa, that's not a good sign. That probably means the project is in trouble in some way, shape, or form. And then we got a demo of Perfect Dark, and it's kind of funny, like now everyone's acting like that demo was some next level mind-blowing thing. You know, I think people have rose-tinted glasses because they want it to be good so they can be angry over the fact that it was canceled. It looked okay. It didn't look mind-blowing to me, but it looked good enough that I was like, okay, the project seems to be on track. And just in the last day, people who were working on Perfect Dark came out to tell people that, yes, that demo was real. Because people were starting to say, well, that looked pretty good. So if it was really that good and that's what the game really looked and played like, why would it be canceled? So people started assuming that that demo was fake. And then people who worked on the game came out this week and said, no, that was actually a real demo. That was what the game looked like. So it looks like the game turned a corner. Now, here's the thing, though. It may have turned a corner too late. That game has been in development for a while now, and they did put out that little demo, but that's pretty much all we've seen of it. We saw a prefabbed CG trailer before that, and that's pretty much it. So it could be a case where, yeah, it finally started rounding into form. They figured out what it was going to be around a year and a half ago, but now maybe they still need to build the game around those concepts. And if that's the case, I can actually see why Microsoft or Xbox cut that game and cut that team. So, I mean, let's be honest, The Initiative had a chance, a long chance. I mean, it worked on that game for years, and at a certain point, Microsoft decided it wasn't worth pursuing further. And let's be fair here, all Microsoft cares about is making money. So it's not like it's going to have a bias against The Initiative or it's going to cancel their game just out of spite or anything like that. It wanted Perfect Dark to be good. It wanted to make money off Perfect Dark. Okay, let's talk about Everwild. Everwild's very much the same story. Rare's been working on that game for like 7 or 8 years. We kept hearing rumblings about how it's been changed and transformed, and now it's this new thing, and then we just never saw it. Rare would never show it. Matt and I would keep predicting that we'd see Everwild in a press conference, and it would never show up. So it's very much the same deal, where the game had a chance, the developers had a chance, they just couldn't deliver on the vision. Again, I don't think Microsoft wanted Rare to fail on Everwild. It wanted Everwild to be good and something that would generate a lot of revenue. That's capitalism. But in its estimation, it was not. Now, Obviously, they didn't just wipe out Rare, because Rare's still working on Sea of Thieves, an ongoing game. But like Greg Mails, someone who has worked at Rare since the N64 days and is a legend at Rare, is no longer at the company. So they did make some pretty deep cuts at Rare without completely chopping the whole studio. So maybe Rare dodged a bullet there. Maybe Rare should be happy that Sea of Thieves did very well on PlayStation 5 when it was announced for PlayStation 5. So just looking specifically at those two games, I don't want you to think I'm covering for Microsoft or whatever. Laying off people is terrible all the time. It doesn't really matter the circumstances. There are people out there who now have to try to find new jobs. That sucks. So I don't think I'm like trying to cover for Microsoft. I'm just looking at this situation with a level head and putting myself in the position of Microsoft or Xbox and what would I have done. And would I have folded the initiative? I don't think I have enough information to decide that, honestly. I don't think it's fair for me even to answer that. Because I just don't know. I don't know what work the initiative did versus what work Crystal Dynamics did on that game. So without that information, it's hard for me to say whether they should chop the studio. But in general, what I would say is that there are just games being canceled all over the place. And some of these games, I think one of the games by ZeniMax Studios had been in development for like 7 years. And so that one to me is the more egregious one. It's like you kept greenlighting this game for 7 years. And now all of a sudden, not only is it not good enough, you're just killing it. So it's hard for me to believe that a bunch of talented people worked on something for 7 years and there was no value in that product. So much so that they just killed it. Not rejiggered it or took a fresh look at it or handed it to another studio who had a different vision for it. Just killed it. Just millions and millions of dollars just flushed down the toilet. That's what I think bothers me more about anything in the games industry, is the waste of money. Because there are so many things that need money. Veterans living on our streets in America need money so that they can get housing. And you just look at these game companies just lighting $400 million on fire like it's nothing. It's just morally reprehensible. And then after all that, they get layoffs. So I saw a meme today. I can't remember which platform it was on, but it was from a developer that I'm friends with. And the meme was, the game sells well, layoffs. The game doesn't sell well, layoffs. The game is taking longer to create than we thought, layoffs. We finished the game early, layoffs. Game sells really well, layoffs. It's like, if you're a developer, no matter what happens, you're getting laid off. Except for maybe the core team at every studio. It's just wrong. There has to be a better way. So again, looking at the situation with these two games in particular, I kind of get where Xbox is coming from, but I'll just be honest with you, the broader picture of the industry, it's not even that it's just unsustainable, it's just that it's gross. Okay, next up we have someone who was a new contributor to Ask Shane last week, and they're coming back with a vengeance this week with another great question, and that is Insert Coin Games. Hi Shane, it's clear that Xbox is shifting its strategy and Sony seems to be coming out on top. It reminds me that Sony has messed up before, like when it tried to charge $600 for the PS3. What kind of mistake would Sony need to make now to level the playing field again? Is there still a chance for Xbox to recover? Could a new contender enter the scene? Yeah, I mean, Sony coming out on top. Yeah, I mean, they won this console generation, but did it really win? I mean, creatively, I don't think it's won anything. It has had horrible output for this entire generation from its first-party studios. Looking back on the PS5, it's really hard to think of like a game other than like Astrobot that was clearly sort of a cut above all the other games that are coming out. Now, again, we haven't got a Naughty Dog game this generation, and maybe Naughty Dog could have done it, but it hasn't. And again, who manages Naughty Dog? PlayStation. So that's on PlayStation as well. They can't get their studio to produce more quickly, and that's because they had Naughty Dog on a game as a service for like 3 years. Not only just a game as a service, like Naughty Dog had its whole team working on that game as a service. It wasn't just some side project. It was the thrust of the studio for a long time. So Naughty Dog's output, that's on PlayStation as well. So you say PlayStation 1, meaning it sold more consoles. And it's making money. I think it's making more money off PS5 than it did off PS4 somehow, even though PS5 is falling now pretty significantly behind PS4. So I guess it's won, or did Nintendo win? I mean, a lot of people don't want to compare Nintendo to PlayStation. PlayStation doesn't want you comparing them to Nintendo because then they might lose. So PlayStation tries to tell you that like, they're not our competitor, only Xbox is our competitor, because then it looks like they won. So I think most people, if you ask them who won, they'll say what you said. They'll say PS5 won. It did win, but it limped across the finish line. I guess I'd put it that way. So what could Sony do at this point to hand market share back to Xbox? I don't know if there's anything, because right now Microsoft is kicking its ass sideways with software output. It's not even close. PlayStation's getting its ass kicked right now as far as software is concerned, and no one cares. I mean, people are subscribed to Game Pass, but not that many, like not as many as you would suspect for the games that are coming out that you can basically play for free every month. Like, I am really shocked that after the first 6 months of 2025, with all the games, first party, exclusive games to Game Pass for the most part, that it hasn't grown more. That there haven't been press releases from Xbox like every 2 months saying, dude, our numbers are going through the roof because we're just delivering on our software, which it is. But it doesn't seem to make a difference. I don't know if people are just misinformed or they're so dug in or everyone's just a fanboy of PlayStation at this point, but I really struggle to think how PlayStation could be knocked off the top. Here's the thing. Xbox really screwed up with the Xbox One. That was an inflection point for the industry. That was when everybody decided, like, okay, all these consoles now are going to be backwards compatible. Which one do I want to place my bet on to have my library on? Which platform? And people chose the PS4 instead of the Xbox One because the Xbox One was a disaster. A complete and utter disaster. That press conference for Xbox One is what killed Xbox pretty much for good. After that, it had to pivot towards Game Pass. So, look, I'm not just saying that PlayStation doesn't want to compete with Nintendo. Xbox doesn't want to compete with PlayStation either. That's why it has Game Pass, so it can say, well, we're doing okay, we're making a ton of money, even though if we were on the old model, we'd be getting our asses kicked sideways. So I think everybody wants to be in their own silo, so they're only compared to themselves, and they don't have to be compared to somebody else, so no one can say that they're a failure. It's a very interesting market right now, to say the least. So, look, you mentioned the PS3 at $600. They just launched the PS5 Pro for $700, and nobody is buying it. And Pachter talked about this in an episode a couple weeks ago, but it's basically the PlayStation 6 is going to cost like $700. If you don't think it is, I don't know what to tell you. If you think they're going to be able to build a PS6 for cheaper than they built the PS5 Pro, I don't know what to tell you. You're living in La La Land. So, PlayStation 6 is going to be really expensive. I'm just telling you that right now. Will that matter? It could. Like, if Microsoft somehow puts out a console that's even in the same sort of class as the PlayStation 6 for a lot cheaper, then it might have a chance. But that's not even Microsoft's strategy anymore. It wants people to subscribe to Game Pass and not necessarily buy its hardware anymore. So PlayStation would have to... This is how far it would have to go. PlayStation would have to sell off or disassociate itself from all its first and second party studios and just say, we're done with this. You can make games for everybody. Or if PlayStation were to allow its games to release on Xbox and Switch 2 day and date, like Microsoft and Xbox is doing right now, then maybe PlayStation would be vulnerable. But that is never going to happen because it knows that if it does that, then it would be vulnerable. So just being honest with you, I think that PlayStation probably has the high-end console market locked down into perpetuity. I do think that maybe Microsoft is regretting its switch to Game Pass at this point, even though it's probably doing great financially. Its software output, it could be winning right now. So, I know it made its decision for Game Pass kind of before it acquired all these studios. Maybe Phil Spencer should have fought for that capital to acquire all these big publishers and studios before they gave up on the old model, instead of using it as a way to thrust people into Game Pass, because let's be honest, that doesn't seem to be working. So I think Microsoft screwed up, PlayStation screwed up, it's not paying for it. Really the only one that seems to be doing things the way it should and full steam ahead, all positive, is probably Nintendo. Okay, our last question for this July 4th special edition of Ask Shane Anything comes from Erebus Jones. How do you personally enjoy gaming whilst at the same time knowing the people who benefit most from your fandom are total bastards? Well, Erebus, I think, this is a good question. I think this is something that people who are thoughtful think about. How do I responsibly go through life not supporting terrible people? I think about it all the time. For example, all these TV networks that are selling themselves out. Like CBS just sold themselves out so a merger could go through. So to me, I'm like, ABC, I don't want to support you. Unfortunately, ABC owns Disney and it owns ESPN and all this stuff that I love. So how do I go through life not supporting ABC? I can't. You can't. Look, I try to take the moral high road every opportunity I can get. And I will put myself out to a certain level to make that happen. And I do, and I will continue to. But there's certain things that you just cannot dodge. If you enjoy video games, and I do, and I always will, nothing that these companies do are going to change my passion for video games. Playing them, talking about them, enjoying them with people like you, that's never going to change. So I have to figure out how can I wriggle around in this industry and still feel like I can lay my head on the pillow at night and go to sleep. It's not easy. I wish I didn't have a conscience sometimes. I really do. It makes life way harder and way more complicated. Sometimes I wish I were just an idiot who just stumbled through life and was like, oh, that sucks. Well, not really. Like I drive myself crazy sometimes trying to figure out how I cannot support certain companies. Like I won't support Home Depot, so I go to Lowe's. Like and after a while, all this stuff, you can't even remember it all because there are bad people everywhere. And it's capitalism, which at this point feels like it just breeds bad people. So what can you do? There's really nothing you can do. Here's my perspective on this is that I'm not going to let bad people keep me from doing something that I want to do. Then I feel like the bad people have won. So if I stop playing video games because there are some bad people that make some money off of the games that I buy, I can't let them win. I'm not going to remove something from my life that I love, and I love it. I'm not going to take that out of my life because there's a couple douchebags out there. I'm just not going to do it because then they win. So all I can say is I do the best that I can to look at every situation and try to be as moral as possible. I try to gather information. I am fortunate. I try to temper my perspective on other people because you don't know their life. I don't have kids. I've never had kids. So I have time to look into stuff. Like if there's a company that I'm like, that seems a little weird, I have the time to go and research it and figure out if it really is weird and really is bad. Most people don't have that time. They are just like, whatever I get is I'm walking through the mall and it's on the TVs there, or like some people literally have no time to look into anything. And so I try not to judge people because who knows? They may have a kid with autism that's taken up like their entire life. And for me to judge them for what they're doing away from that situation isn't right. Again, my conscience getting the best of me. But anyway, look, I'm guessing you feel like me. Like you don't want to support bad people, but unfortunately in our society, particularly in a capitalist society, you really just have no choice. All right, that's it for this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything. A big thanks to all our patrons who make this happen, and a lot of you guys are pledging at $7 or more per month at that Ask Shane tier, and that is why this happens. Of course, everyone who's pledging at $5 or more gets to watch this day and date. Everybody gets to ask questions, and I take questions from everybody, though if I get to the point where I'm deciding between two, generally the person who's pledging at that Ask Shane tier, I will choose that question. Again, I say this all the time, but I think you guys all understand that. So thanks to everybody who supports us in any way. Even if you give us $1 on our Patreon, or you're just liking this show or commenting on this show, it all adds up and makes a difference for us, and we appreciate it very much. I hope everybody enjoys the long weekend in America, whether you feel up to celebrating July 4th and Independence Day or not. It is a day off for most people and a 3-day weekend for most people, and so at the very least, I hope that you will enjoy playing some of your favorite video games and spending some time with friends and family who you care about. So have yourselves a great weekend no matter where you live, and we'll see you next time.